At the heart of the African continent lies a small gem. Rough and rugged are its terrain. An invader's worst nightmare, but an inhabitant's best source of defense. Covered with mountains, lakes, and rivers, lies a country nicknamed the Land of a Thousand Hills. I present to you Rwanda. In this episode, we will take an in-depth look at every detail of the country known as Rwanda, to get a full picture of the country's profile, to better understand its power and position in the world. I am Brian, and welcome to the Third World Report, where we give nothing but detailed facts, both pleasant and unpleasant, about every country in the world from a third world perspective. Rwanda is a landlocked country in East Central Africa. It covers an area of 26,338 square kilometers, of which an area of 1,670 is covered by water. It extends 248 kilometers northeast to southwest and 166 kilometers southeast to northwest. Comparatively, the area occupied by Rwanda is slightly smaller than Albania or Maryland in the USA. It is ranked 149th in the world in terms of total area. It is bordered to the north by Uganda, to the east by Tanzania, to the south by Burundi, and on the west or northwest by the Democratic Republic of Congo. Rwanda's capital city, Kigali, is located near the center of the country. Rwanda lies on the Great East African Plateau. To the west, the land drops sharply to Lake Kivu, while to the east, the land falls gradually to the swamps and lakes of the country's eastern border. The central grassy uplands and hills where Kigali is located are the core areas of settlement of the Rwandese people. Almost all of Rwanda is at least 3,300 feet above sea level. The high altitude provides the country with a pleasant tropical highland climate. On the central plateau, where Kigali is located, the average temperature is 21 degrees Celsius. However, temperature varies considerably from region to region because of the variations in altitude. The highest point in the country is Mount Kirisimbi, which is part of the volcanic Virunga Mountains, with an altitude of 4,519 meters. The mountains in Rwanda are sometimes affected by frost and snow. The lowest point in the country is the Ruzizi River, with an altitude of 950 meters. Located on the southwest of the country, it drains from Lake Kivu to Lake Tanganyika in Burundi's western border. The climate in Rwanda is temperate with two rainy seasons. The long rains are from February to May, and the short rains November through December. Rainfall is highest in the northwest and southwest, where there is thick forest, and lightest in the east. In the west near Kibuye, annual rainfall averages 160 centimeters per year. Near Gabiro in the northeast, it averages 78 centimeters, and in the south, it averages 115 centimeters. Most of Rwanda is grassland. There is little forest left. The country is one of the most eroded and deforested in tropical Africa. Remaining woodlands are small areas of tropical forests along the western border, north and south of Lake Kivu. Between 1981 and 1985, deforestation averaged 7,000 acres per year. Between 1990 and 2000, the average rate of deforestation was 3.9% per year. By the year 2000, only about 12.4% of the total land area was forested. However, the Kigali government has taken measures to prevent the degradation of woodlands and restore previously forested areas. According to the CIA report, approximately 18% of the country is currently under forest cover. However, woodlands still face intense pressure from uncontrolled cutting for fuel from the growing population. Like most African countries, more than 70% of household energy needs come from charcoal and firewood. Both are products of trees. One way the country is fighting back against environmental degradation is with a complete ban on plastic bags, which litter most African cities, towns, and villages. Rwanda is actually the first country in the world to put a total ban on plastic bags. About 75% of the land is arable, of which 60% of this is used for farming. The ability of the nation's agricultural sector to meet the demands of its large population are complicated by the overuse and infertility of the soil. Soil erosion and overgrazing are also serious problems affecting Rwanda. Use of outdated technology, such as ox plows, also impairs the country's ability to be food sufficient. One of the effects of forest clearing and irrigation is an increase in the cases of malaria and sleeping sickness, which increases the breeding ground for disease-carrying insects. Another effect is a loss of habitat for a number of native species such as lions, buffaloes, zebras, hippos, and many others. Wildlife was abundant before the region became agricultural, but Rwanda still remains one of the few places in the world where one can see wild mountain gorillas. Rwanda is a small country blessed with a number of natural resources other than immense beauty. There are deposits of gold and rare earth minerals. Natural gas has also been discovered under Lake Kivu, and potential hydropower capability from the many rivers that run to the hilly country, and not to forget the arable land. The small country is afflicted by a number of natural hazards, namely periodic droughts limiting the potential for agriculture and volcanism from the numerous volcanoes in the country, especially the active ones lying on the country's western border with the Democratic Republic of Congo, which erupt from time to time. The last eruption was in 2002 near a small town named Goma. As of 2017, Rwanda has a population of 12.2 million. It is ranked as the 76th most populated country in the world. Rwandan population is equivalent to 0.16% of the total world population. It may not sound like much until you take into account the small size of the country. Rwanda is amongst the most densely populated countries in Africa, with 483 inhabitants per square kilometer. It is the 25th most densely populated country in the world, according to the UN. Population density is high, but not concentrated in large metropolises. Its approximately 12 million people are spread out throughout the small country. Large concentrations tend to be the central regions and along the shores of Lake Kivu in the west. People from Rwanda are called Rwandese or Rwandan. The three major ethnic groups in Rwanda are the Hutu, 24% of the population, the Tutsi, who are 14% of the population, and the Twa, who are less than 1% of the population. Ever since the 1994 genocide, Rwandese prefer not being asked what ethnicity they are. But when asked, they usually reply, "I am Rwandese." A few Africans from neighboring countries can be found in the major towns and cities of the country, as well as a number of East and South Asians who have settled in the area to do trade and business. Kinyarwanda, French, and English are the official languages of the country, and Kiswahili is also taught and widely spoken, especially in commercial centers. A majority of the population are Christian, a result of the colonial past. Roman Catholics make up approximately 49.5% of the population, while Protestants 39.4%. Other Afro-Christians make up 4.5%, while Muslims make up 1.8%. The Baha'i and Hindu community account for 0.6% of the population. The rest adhere to no faith or are unspecified. However, most religious practitioners mix the traditional beliefs with their faith. For example, the tradition of slaughtering a bull or ram during funerals is followed by a majority if not all Rwandese, whether they are Christians or Muslims. Rwanda is a young nation, resulting from a high birth rate, a declining child mortality rate, sustained high fertility, early marriages and childbearing ages, and an unmet need for family planning. More than 40% of Rwandese are under the age of 15, and less than 2% are above the age of 65. With the majority of people below the minimum working age, Rwanda has a high dependency ratio, meaning that there are many dependents relying on too few providers with limited resources, which may hinder the ability of the country and its people to improve the living standards of every citizen. The total dependency ratio is 78.1, while the potential support ratio is 20.1. The median age in Rwanda is 19 years old. While many Western and Asian countries are fighting a battle against an aging population, Rwanda and most, if not all, African countries are fighting a battle over a booming young population and not enough jobs for each and every one of them. Rwanda's fertility rate, although high, has been declining sharply during the last decades. As a result of the government's commitment to family planning, the increased use of contraceptives, and a downward trend in adult family size. Increases in educational attainment, particularly among girls, and exposure to social media also contributed to the reduction in the birth rate. The average number of children born per woman decreased from 5.6 in 2005 to 3.87 in 2017. Despite these significant strides in reducing the fertility rate, Rwanda's birth rate remains very high, and will continue to for an extended period of time because of its large population entering the reproductive age. Because Rwanda is one of the most densely populated countries in Africa, its persistent high population growth and increasingly small agricultural holdings will put additional strain on families' ability to eat foodstuffs and access potable water. These conditions will also hinder the government's efforts to reduce poverty and prevent environmental degradation. Rwanda's current population growth rate is 2.5%, which the government still deems as way too high. Chief among the government's concerns is whether the economy can support the growing population. A mother's mean age at first birth in Rwanda is 23 years old. The country is predominantly rural, with approximately 3% of Rwandese living in an urban setting, according to the World Bank. However, the rate of urbanization is much higher than in most countries, with an annual rate of change of above 6% since 2010. Kigali, the capital, is the most urbanized city in the country, and the go-to place for any business and economic activity in Rwanda. With a population of 1,257,000, approximately 10% of the entire country's population lives in or around the city. It is also the only city in the country which has a population of more than 1 million. Kigali is also one of, if not the cleanest city in sub-Saharan Africa, not only thanks to the ban on plastic bags, but also because of a compulsory law for all Rwandese citizens to help clean up the community on the last Saturday of every month. When one is born in Rwanda, one can expect to live until the age of 62.3 years old if you're male, and 66.3 if you're female. It doesn't sound like a long and fruitful life until you consider that in the 70s, the average life expectancy was 44 years of age. The country is also affected by a high number of people living with HIV and AIDS, which contributed to a lower life expectancy, higher infant mortality, and higher death rates. According to the CIA Factbook, approximately 3.1% of adults may be affected with the virus. As a whole, it is estimated that approximately 220,000 people are infected with the virus, which contributed to 3,300 deaths in 2016. Government health expenditures in Rwanda amounted to 7.5% of the GDP as of 2017. The anticipated 0.1 trained physicians for every 1,000 people as of 2017. 5.8% of adults are considered to be obese, while 9.3% of children are considered to be underweight. As of 2017, approximately 86% of the urban population have access to improved drinking water sources, while 71% of the rural population have access to improved drinking water sources. And approximately 58.5% of the urban population have access to improved sanitation facilities, and 62.9% of the rural population have access to improved sanitation facilities. Government education expenditures in Rwanda amounted to approximately 5% of the GDP as of 2017. 73% of males are able to read and write, while 68% of females are able to do the same. Rwandans are expected to go through 11 years of education, primary to tertiary. In October 2008, the government decided to change the medium of education from French to English, after joining the predominantly English-speaking East African community. The change in the medium of education was seen by France as retaliation to the accusations France had thrown at President Kagame. Rwanda has the highest primary school enrollment rates in sub-Saharan Africa, with 96.5% of children in school, but there is evidence that the extension of reach has come at the expense of quality. The official name of the country is the Republic of Rwanda. The name translates as domain in the native Kinyarwanda language. Rwanda is a presidential republic. It is made up of 4 provinces and a city, Kigali, where the country's capital and seat of government is located. Each province has a provincial capital, and the provinces are further subdivided into 30 districts. Kigali is known as the African city where everything works, both the streetlights and the police. Rwanda follows a mixed legal system of civil law based on the German and Belgian models and customary law. In Rwanda, one cannot get citizenship by birth. At least one parent must be a citizen of Rwanda. Dual citizenship is also not recognized in Rwanda. For naturalization, one needs to be a resident for 10 years. The whole country of Rwanda lies under one time zone, which is 2 hours ahead of GMT and 7 hours ahead of Washington, D.C. Rwanda attained independence on the 1st of July 1962 from Belgium. The president is both chief of state and head of government. The president holds office for a 7-year term, after which he is eligible for a second term. However, constitutional amendments approved in December 2016 included one that reduces the presidential term from 7 years to 5 years, but includes an exception that allows President Kagame to serve another 7-year term in 2017, of which he won with over 98% of the vote. Potentially followed by 2 additional 5-year terms, the next elections are to be held on August 4, 2024. All Rwandese above the age of 18 are eligible to vote. Paul Kagame has been president of Rwanda since April 22, 2000. His Prime Minister, Edward Ngirente, who is appointed by the President, has been serving since the 30th of August 2017. The Cabinet or Council of Ministers are also appointed by the President. The National Assembly of Rwanda is bicameral, meaning that they have 2 parts. The upper house, which is the Senate, has 26 seats, with members serving for 8 years. The lower house is the Chamber of Deputies, which has 80 seats, with members serving for 5 years. 24 seats are allocated to women, who are elected by special interest groups. The law, which was put in place after the genocide, represented the demographics of the country at the time, as there were more women than men. Rwanda is the first country in the world to have a female majority present in parliament, where currently 56% of parliamentaries are women, who say there was no women's rights and feminism in Africa. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the land. It consists of the Chief Justice, Deputy Chief Justice, and 15 judges. It is normally organized into 3 judge panels. Supreme Court judges are nominated by the President of the Republic after consultation with the Cabinet and the Superior Council of the Judiciary, a 27-member body of judges, judicial officials, and legal professionals. Such appointments are then approved by the Senate. The Chief and Deputy Chief Justices are appointed for 8-year and renewable terms. The judicial hierarchy continues with various subordinate courts. Rwanda is a member of numerous international organizations, including but not limited to the United Nations, the African Union, the World Trade Organization, World Health Organization, East African Community, COMESA, and the G77. The flag consists of 3 horizontal bands. The top band, which is double width, is sky blue, followed by yellow and green bands. Near the fly end of the blue band lies a golden sun with 24 rays. Blue represents happiness and peace, yellow economic development and mineral wealth, green, hope and prosperity, and natural resources. The sun symbolizes unity, as well as enlightenment and transparency from ignorance. The flag was adopted in 2001 to promote national unity and reconciliation. The national symbols of Rwanda are a traditional woven basket with a peaked lid and a leopard. The national colors are blue, yellow, and green. The national anthem is Rwanda Nziza, which translates to Rwanda, our beautiful country. It was adopted in 2001 along with the flag. Rwanda is a rural agrarian country, with a large percentage of the population engaged in subsistence agriculture. Tourism, minerals, coffee and tea are Rwanda's main sources of foreign exchange. Despite Rwanda's fertile ecosystem, food production often does not keep in pace with demand, requiring food imports. Remittance is also becoming a major foreign income earner for the country, which received $172 million in 2016 from remittance and $163 million in 2015, according to the World Bank. Energy shortages, instability in neighboring states, and the lack of adequate transport linkages to other countries continue to handicap private sector growth. The 1994 genocide decimated Rwanda's fragile economic base and severely impoverished the population, particularly women and children, and temporarily stalled the country's ability to attract private and external investments. However, Rwanda has made substantial progress in stabilizing and rehabilitating its economy beyond pre-1994 levels. GDP has rebounded with an annual growth rate of 6 to 8% since 2003, and inflation has been reduced to single digits. In 2017, 39% of the population lived below the poverty line, according to government statistics, compared to 57% in 2006. Mining profits in 2015 were reduced by almost half, owing to the drop in global demand for minerals. Continental Africa's most densely populated country is trying to overcome the limitations of its small landlocked economy by leveraging regional trade. Rwanda joined the East African community and is aligning its budget, trade and immigration policies with its regional partners. The government has embraced an expansion of fiscal policy to reduce poverty by improving education, infrastructure, and foreign and domestic investment. In recognition of Rwanda's successful management of its macroeconomy, in 2010, the IMF graduated Rwanda to a policy support instrument. The Rwandan government is seeking to become a regional leader in information and communication technologies. In 2012, Rwanda completed the first modern special economic zone in Kigali. The SEZ seeks to attract investment in all sectors, but specifically in agribusiness, information and communications, trade and logistics, mining and construction. In 2016, the government launched an online system to give investors information about public land and its suitability for agricultural development. It may seem like a small step, but when you look at the Rwandese context, it is a breakthrough. The size of the Rwandese GDP, based on purchasing power parity, was $22.79 billion as of 2016 and $21.52 billion the previous year. It is a small economy, but it is steadily rising at a pace faster than most. And unlike its African counterparts, the Rwandese economy, small as it may be, is one of the most organized in the whole of Africa. The dragon that is corruption has been put at bay in this small economy. Rwanda is the 50th least corrupt country out of 176 countries, according to the 2016 Corruption Perception Index by the Transparency International. It may not sound impressive until you realize Rwanda is ranked third least corrupt country in sub-Saharan Africa. Everything that goes in is used to the maximum of its capabilities. The Rwandese economy is ranked 141st in the world, next to Benin and Kazakhstan. The per capita GDP was 2,000 USD as of 2016 and 1,900 USD as of 2015. When it comes to per capita GDP, Rwanda is ranked 204th in the world. Rwanda's real growth rate was 5.9% as of 2016 and 8.9% as of 2015. Gross national saving in 2016 was 11.7% of GDP and 13.1% of GDP the year before that. Agriculture is the backbone of the Rwandese economy. It not only contributes to 35% of the country's GDP, but is also a major foreign income earner for the country, through the sale of its major cash crops, coffee and tea, in the international markets. Agriculture is also the sector that employs the largest portion of the Rwandese labor force. 75% of the population are involved in the agricultural sector, at least part-time. Like in most African countries, labor is not the only factor of production the poor own. A majority of the poor, even the extremely poor, own a portion of land, however small. This land is mostly in rural areas. Many people plant some crops on their land, such as maize and beans, to supplement their food supply or income, even though they may be working in a town or city as a teacher or electrician. Coffee and tea are Rwanda's main cash crops, and have been since colonial times. Rwanda also produces perithium, bananas, beans, sorghum, potatoes, and livestock, among others. Rwanda is not an industrialized nation, though that's where its ambition lies. Industry contributes to 15% of the Rwandese economy and employs about 6.7% of the labor force. Rwanda's manufacturing base is limited to a few basic products, including but not limited to cement, agricultural products, small-scale beverages, soap, furniture, shoes, plastic goods, textiles, and cigarettes. Industrial production grew by 6.9% in 2016. Compared to other countries in the world, it is the 18th most rapidly industrializing country in the world. The service sector is the largest contributor to the Rwandese economy, contributing to approximately 50.03% of the economy, while employing 18% of the labor force. This is another sector the Rwandese government has been encouraging to improve over the past 2 decades. Services such as banking, retail, entertainment, and transport have greatly improved. An important part of this sector is tourism, which contributed around $500 million to the economy in 2016. Rwanda has an available labor force of 6.03 million as of 2017. It is ranked 71st in terms of labor power. The real rate of unemployment in Rwanda is at 16.7% as of 2017. When it comes to the country's budget, government revenues were calculated to be approximately $1.958 billion, while expenditure was approximately $2.268 billion as of 2016. That's a 13% budget deficit, according to the CIA Factbook. An important thing to note is that approximately 30% of the country's budget is on foreign aid, though the government has been working tirelessly to reduce its dependence on foreign aid. In 2016, public debt was at 43.4% of GDP and 36.2% of GDP in 2015. Rwanda is ranked 120th in terms of public debt, according to the CIA Factbook, making it one of the least indebted countries in the world. Inflation rates are at 4.6% as of 2016 and 2.5% the previous year. Rwanda exported goods worth $745 million in 2016, an increase from $683 million exported in 2015. The country's main exports were coffee, tea, hides, and tin ore. Rwanda's main export partners were the Democratic Republic of Congo, which received 31% of exports, Kenya 16%, the UAE 14%, Switzerland 9%, and Burundi 6%. The country then imported goods worth $2 billion in 2016 and $1.9 billion in 2015. The main import products were foodstuffs, machinery, equipment, steel, and petroleum products. The country's main import partners are China, which contributed to 21% of the imports, Uganda 11%, Kenya 8%, India 7%, the UAE 6%, and Tanzania 5%. This trade imbalance created a deficit of $1.2 billion. In 2015, the trade deficit was $1.1 billion. As of December 2016, Rwanda's foreign exchange and gold reserves were worth $756 million, while its external debts stood at $2.4 billion. Although foreign direct investment stocks have increased to $2 billion in recent years, due to Rwanda's political stability and measures focused on improving the business climate, FDI flows still remain rather weak, with approximately $380 million in 2015 and $409 million in 2016, according to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development World Investment Report. The political instability of its neighboring country, the Democratic Republic of Congo, has had an impact on the entire Great Lakes region and has discouraged international businesses from investing in the area. Rwanda's low human resource capability, poor infrastructure, landlocked position, high operating cost, limited natural resources, and the political instability of the region are some of the factors that limited the potential attractiveness of the country. Nevertheless, Rwanda has many assets, a substantial reserve of oil and gas, a yet to be explored mining potential expansion, and a reputation of being one of the least corrupt countries in Africa. Lastly, the government has continued to develop liberal policies to transform Rwanda into a trade and service hub. This strategy has obtained real success, as shown by the significant reduction in its bureaucratic procedures. According to the World Bank, there are only 2 administrative procedures to follow, and only 3 days are required for a new company to start its activities. The country is also ranked 41st on the Doing Business 2017 ranking of the World Bank, gaining 17 spots compared to 2016. Rwanda is the second highest ranked country located in sub-Saharan Africa after Mauritius. The primary countries investing in Rwanda are the United States, China, India, Kenya, and the Netherlands. The exchange rate for the Rwandese currency, the Rwandese franc, to the US dollar is $1 is equivalent to 852 Rwandese francs as of November 2017. The currency has been losing value over the past few years. In 2012, $1 was the equivalent of 616 Rwandese francs. 21% of Rwandese have constant access to electricity or are connected to the mains, according to the CIA report, 67% in urban areas and 5% in rural areas. This does not mean that 9.3 million Rwandese have never seen electricity. It means that they don't have access to it at their own personal residence. but are able to access electricity in public places, such as schools, hospitals, restaurants, barbershops, etc. Rwanda produced 500 million kilowatt-hours of electricity as of 2014 and consumed the same amount. The electricity installed generating capacity is 100,000 kilowatt-hours. 34.3% of that electricity was produced from fossil fuels, while 65.7% from hydroelectric plants. Rwanda has no known crude oil, no coal reserves, neither do they have any refinery capabilities. Thus is a net importer of energy. Refined petroleum products imports were approximately 6,300 barrels per day in 2017. Rwanda does have proven reserves of natural gas that it has yet to tap into. The reserves are estimated to be 56.6 billion cubic meters, which puts the reserves at 61st in the world. Rwanda is a very small emitter of carbon dioxide, ranked as 172nd carbon emitter in the world, yet the effects of global warming can be felt in present-day Rwanda. Like most African countries, Rwanda has few subscriptions to fixed telephone lines, a total of 16,983 subscriptions as of 2017. That is less than one for every 100 people. Thanks to advancements in technology, many African countries were able to skip this stage, but still have access to telephone services and data. Mobile cellular subscriptions are more common, with a total of 8.96 million as of 2016. That is 69 subscriptions for every 100 inhabitants, and Rwanda ranks 98th when it comes to mobile cellular subscriptions. The general assessment of the telephone system by the international community is that it is small and inadequate, and primarily serves businesses, educational centers, and the government. There are approximately 2.5 million internet users in Rwanda as of 2017. This accounts for around 20% of the entire population. Rwanda's international code is 250. There are various TV station networks, newspapers, and radio stations operating within Rwanda, Rwanda TV being the most popular TV station. One can also access cable and satellite TV and radio stations as well at a higher cost. There is one registered air carrier in the country, Rwanda Air, which I'll make a video about in future. The air passenger traffic on the registered carriers was 640,000 in 2016. The country has a total of 7 airports, 4 of which have paved runways. The largest and busiest being the Kigali International Airport in Kigali, followed by KAMEMBE International Airport in Kamembe. Rwanda is dependent on its road transport system for the economic development of the country. All the major towns are connected by the road network. Rwanda is also well connected by the road transport system with the neighboring countries. The road system plays a very important role in the import and export business of the country. The Rwanda road network has improved through rehabilitation and upgrading during the past years. The total road network covers 14,000 kilometers, 2,662 kilometers of paved roads, and 11,346 kilometers of unpaved roads. Being a landlocked country, Rwanda has no seaports. However, it does have a few lake ports in Kibuye, Cyangungu, and Gisenyi, which are towns along Lake Kivu. Rwanda's military, better known as the Rwanda Defense Force, comprises of the Rwanda Army and the Rwanda Air Force. Rwanda and Burundi may be East Africa's community's smallest nations in terms of size and population, but the two countries have the region's largest armies in proportion to the labor force. With a standing army of 35,000 soldiers, according to the World Bank, they make up 0.58% of the workforce in Rwanda. The country's 2016 military budget of $105 million may be dwarfed well next to its larger neighbors, and even more in the world stage. However, this is almost double the amount Rwanda spent on its military 10 years ago. The Rwandan army may not be equipped with the latest cutting-edge machinery, but they do compensate by having one of the best trained, experienced, and most disciplined militaries in the region. The Air Force lost most of its equipment battling the RPF between 1991 and 1994 before the genocide. Few equipment survived. Currently, the Air Force is mainly equipped by Soviet-era attack helicopters. After looking at all the country's facts, one can clearly see the country for what it truly is. It's definitely not a powerhouse on the African continent, nor is it a regional power. But it is still a country we can admire and learn a lot from, especially about getting back on one's feet and how to manage the little resources we have to build a better future. Rwanda may have a long way to go before it achieves its dreams of becoming the African Singapore. However, in my opinion, it is on the right path, and will get there sooner than we think. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. This was a Third World Report by me, Brian. Be sure to like and subscribe to receive more in-depth and detailed videos on country histories and country profiles. Thank you for watching, and kwaheri.